All right, so today we're going to start drawing objects. So you should have a fake apple and a fake plant on your table. You're going to have to share with the people at your table, but you are going to be able to use either or. So you can choose. The apple's a little bit easier than the plant, but it's your choice. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, you can do the plant. You want to make it a little bit easier for yourself, you can pick the apple. So if I were to draw this apple, we'll start by opening up my sketchbook and I will grab a pencil. So we are going to start sketching with a pencil and then we'll go back in and use a pen. So what we're going to be doing is draw the apple or the plant from 3 different points of view. So we're going to do the top, the side, maybe the bottom, whichever area you want. So if I were to look at it at the top or at the side or whichever area, you can see that the light that's shining on it is going to create highlights. So that is where you see those little white spots on the apple. So we are going to make sure we are aware of those and we are going to start. So you are going to use a spread of the sketchbook. So you're going to open it up and use almost like the 2 pages. So if I were to look at the apple from right above, as such, I will start by drawing almost like the circle. I will start creating different circle where the highlights are going to be and another like area where the stem is going to be. So once I have sketched that out and I am ready, I am going to start sketching out where my highlights are going to be. So as you can see, there's one right there at the top and one right there at the bottom. There's a little bit on the side over there. So I'm going to grab my pencil and outline those on the apple, but I will also outline all of the shadows. So as you can see, I'm outlining the shadow right now on that side. So that is where the apple is going to look a little bit darker. You can also shade it in with your pencil a little bit just to remember perfectly where you want it to be. So once you go back in with the pen, you are going to be sure that that's where you want the shadow to be and where the highlight is going to be. So what I would do and suggest to all of you is that if all of the people at the table are doing the apple, maybe put the apple in the middle of the table so everybody can look at it and do not move it. So if you move it around where the highlights are and where the shadows are, it's going to change. So once we have the sketch done, we are going to look back at our pen techniques page and we are going to pick whichever one we want to use. So I will probably use the cross hatching for this page, but we'll see. So if you want to do the plant, you're going to basically draw it from the top, the side, and maybe like another weird angle, wherever you want it to look at it from. So you can start with the first apple and then just like color it in. We are going to draw it from the 3 different sides. So as you can see, I'm just playing around with my composition a little bit. I'm going to put the apple seen from the side over there. But think about where you're going to put all of your apples. If you want, you can just start with one, color it in, and then once you have it fully finished with the pen, you can move on to the second one, which is what I would suggest since we are going to be doing it in different separate days. You want to keep the apple where the shadows and the highlights are going to be the same. I am just going to quickly sketch out my second apple just so you get the idea of how to do it, how to position them and everything. Make sure that once you have your apples drawn, you also add the cast shadow underneath it. So the cast shadow, it's going to be the shadow that you will see on the table. Okay, so if you put the apple down, the shadow that's on the table, you're going to have to draw that as well. So you're going to make sure that you have the cast shadow for all of your apples. So all the apples you draw, you will have to create a cast shadow. So as you can see, even the one from above, if you were to look at it from right above, there is a cast shadow right to the left side of it. So you're going to just sketch it out super quick. And I am looking at it from a different angle from where the camera is. So from my angle, it looks a little bit longer. So once I'm done with my 2 apples, I'm just playing around and seeing how I want my apple to be set up. How do I want to draw it? How do I want to draw the bottom? So you will need to play a little bit with the people at your table once you get to this point. But this is going to be probably further down the week. Once I have my apple set up, I will quickly sketch that as well. And you cannot really see it in this video, but I'm making sure that it's a little bit between the pages. So I'm extending it a little bit to this other page of the sketchbook just to create a little bit of a spread. That means using both of the pages. So once I'm done with the sketch, I can finally start moving on to the pen part of it. So for all of my apples, I've decided to use the cross-hatching technique, which means lines that cross each other. So for this one, I am not to create very, very straight lines. In this occasion, I am going to use lines that kind of sort of follow the shape of the apple. So as you can see right now, I'm just creating the shadow of the stem, having darks and highlights. So the side that's more to my left, it's going to be a little bit darker, so make sure you do that cross hatching. And then the side to the right, it's closer to the light. So I'm going to keep my pen a little bit lighter and I'm going to spread my lines a little bit more. Once I'm done with that, I am going to start working on the apple a little bit more, and I'll speed up the video so you can kind of see it faster, what I mean with following the lines of the apple. So as I move down to the bottom of the apple, you're going to see it a lot more. So as you can see, my lines are not straight going up and down. They are following the curve of the apple. So they are following that curve. And as I go more towards the center of the apple, they are going to be looking a little bit more straight to then start following the right side curve of the apple. So I started cross-hatching very harshly towards that bottom left area, just because that's the area that looks the darkest to me as I'm looking at the apple. So just cross-hatching, getting those lines very close to each other, using the pen with a lot of pressure, and just working through those. Even the lines that are horizontal go with a little bit of a curve. So like from up, they go a little bit down and then up again, following that curve of the apple. And as soon you will be able to see, as I go higher up, there is a little bit more of a highlight. So I am keeping my pen a little bit lighter. My lines are a little bit more separate. They're a little bit more spread apart. So that is going to be a little bit more of my highlight where the light shines on the apple. And you will see the whole process. So I will have the video of an entire apple, I think, and I'll get it posted so you can kind of see it. You can speed through it. I will also speed it up a little bit so you can just see it a little bit faster. But it's just a process of going up and down, left to right, just doing the cross-hatching, and just keep looking at that apple. So you do not want to move it. You don't want to lose sight of it. Just keep looking at that apple and just draw what your eyes see. And it is still okay to go back in with pencil and sketch out those highlights a little bit better if you realize that you missed some, if you wanted to add a certain spot. If you see anything that you've missed while sketching it out, you can still grab that pencil. You can still add those things. If you could not see them well, you can redraw them. Just make sure that they are where you want them to be. As you do your cross-hatching, also be careful around the area where you want to shade it in nicely and blend it in nicely. So there is going to be a darker area, but it's not going to jump from very, very dark to very, very light right away. So just make sure you blend those colors in nicely. I also started just doing lines just around the apple. As you can kind of see, they still have that sort of curve. And I just have them a little bit spread apart. So I just start with that and then I add more in wherever I need to add some in. Also, when thinking about your highlights, it is okay to leave them almost white. Just add a little bit of lines that are very spread apart and then the very, 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 very brightest spot can be left white. So as you can see, I'm moving from one side of the apple to the other. I just keep looking at the apple, keep looking at my apple drawing, and just keep looking at where my highlights and darks are, and keep readjusting how my drawing looks based on what I'm seeing. So just keep staring at that apple, observe it really well, and then keep adding those tones, those highlights, those darks to your apple drawing. So once we are done with our apple and we add all of our little finishing touches, what we're going to do is start working our cast shadow. So you can, your apple is going to be further away from you. For the cast shadow, still follow that same curve of the cast shadow, kind of like what you did with the apple. So do not make your lines very straight. Just keep following that curve and fill that whole cast shadow in, which is going to be the shadow that is reflected on your table from the apple. Once you're done with that, amazing job. You finished your first apple. Now we got to make 2 more.